Remember that you're also invited to lend your thoughts, comments, and opinion to these stories, but we also advise that you refrain from using inciting or inflammatory statements when you do so. Be civil in your approach as you join us across social media handles this morning to lend your thoughts. Well, joining us virtually is an ardent economist and a social commentator, Dr. Aliyu Ilias, who joins us virtually from the nation's capital. Hello, Doctor. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you. Now, making good conversations this morning is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's directive to halt the planned 5% telecom tax. This is ahead of the commencement of the new tax regime scheduled for January 1st, 2026. What does this mean for over 176 million telecom subscribers?
When we get to hear that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu then said they should halt it, it's quite instructive because if you look at the way things are, purchasing power of Nigerians are getting much more challenging as we look at the inflation level, look at the cost of food, cost of items, cost of commodity. It simply means that any additional tariff or tax on Nigerians will reflect deep more in the pocket. So it's quite instructive. I will expect President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to uphold that. He also has directed most revenue agencies to look at their charges and their the way they revenue sources so that they will rejig it and make it much more balanced.
Now, this balance we're looking to find, how does it translate into better revenue? Remember that there have been a number of attempts to increase the cost of telecom services. The NCC had approved a 50% telecom tariff hike earlier in the year, much to the dismay of Nigerians. How do we find this tax harmonization in light with this tax here, this tax there? How can Nigerians better understand the transparency in this process?
Well, it's clear that this present government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu have paid chance for revenue, and that's why you see the message of Osun talking about safety net. So, and the best safety net is to reduce the cost that people incur in doing things. So for me, I think we don't need that at this point in time. Recall our cost of making calls, cost of SMS have increased. SMS is now from 4 naira to 6 naira. I will pay more to cost, and even data has become much more expensive. In fact, the pattern of removing the money now has changed. So I think at this point in time, I will advise President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to tarry, because I know that all the revenue they want to do, will be this year, because they will not want to do it next year, because it will be a bad optics for them for the upcoming election. But by and large, I think anything that kills our survivor, it's a problem to every Nigerian.
Now, I'd just like to make reference to some of the statements made by the Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Dr. Aminu Maida, who, speaking to some of my colleagues, looked to clear the air on the difference in excess duty, 5% as it were, in the telecommunication tax, in reference to the new tax law. He says, if you don't mind, and I quote, "The 5% excess duty is part of a broader tax reform initiative under a bill titled A Bill for an Act to Repeal Certain Acts on Taxation and Consolidate the Legal Frameworks Relating to Taxation and Enact the Nigerian Tax Act to Provide for Taxation of Income, Transactions and Instruments and Related Matters." And in reference to this legislation that is supposed to provide and empower the NCC to be able to receive such revenue, how valid is the need for this Nigerian Tax Act to provide for taxation of income, transactions and instruments and other matters related?
Well, the major issue is that, I am glad that they are doing the review, because the review actually will expose them and to also expose Nigerians that are not in the tax net. However, it has to have a human face. You remember the new tax is going to even commence by January 2026. So we are actually waiting for the benefits there. So if you are bringing anyone again that has to do with telecoms, that means, and that's our problem. There is a numerous taxes we pay, and we have been talking about harmonization of those taxes. And now he is quoting the bill. Remember, me and you may not be at the point of arguing the bill. We can only make our own commentary on what that be. The National Assembly are supposed to actually be in defense of Nigeria. So for me, if they are, we are not stopping them from collecting tax or maybe telecommunication tax or whatever they call it, but it should have human face. And when it has human face, it should reduce, the way at which we pay. And my concern more is not even about tax now. I wish, I don't know if your colleague and your team actually ask him as well. What are they doing to drop calls? What are they doing to exorbitant price we are paying on SMS? What are they doing to all those? So if we are paying tax and we are seeing it reflecting, sometimes Nigerians may not even complain. So I think they should reduce the tax we are paying, why they should harmonize other sundry taxes.
Now, according to data available to us, I'd like to ask on your level of satisfaction. One of the reasons given for the January approval of a 50% telecom tariff hike was the fact that it would unlock over $1 billion for telecom providers in Nigeria. I don't want to go into naming brands, but following this approval, can you say conclusively that the quality of service has improved and that Nigerians are getting value for money?
I'm sure your guess is as good as mine and Nigerians that are listening to us. Since the day they actually increased it, it has been reducing more and more. So the quality of service we are receiving has dropped. The call are dropping. A lot of things are happening, which is so so sad. And when they increase that tariff, they told us that it's going to reflect on our day-to-day and they'll build more infrastructure. You have not seen the reflection of that infrastructure. However, that's my problem with most of our regulatory bodies. They are quick to support the provider of service at the expense of the users. For us, we have been talking about drop calls. I just saw yesterday that they said they are going to maybe go hard on telcos that the calls are dropping. For me, it's much more of rhetoric. Before you charge us, before you increase the tariff, you should have made sure that they actually spend this money on that area. So it's a serious issue. You go to some organized country, you see how telecos is used to actually galvanize the economy, because the more, if the cost of your calls, the cost of data increases, it inadvertently affects the cost of your production. It reflects on your GDP, because people don't know that most MSME, we relied on what? On data to do a lot of things. We rely on calls and what have you. Imagine, if for myself, I can tell you I've been trying to call my parents and it has been dropping. So it's a sad reality that we are actually trying to manage here. So I will challenge the NCC to do more in terms of, in as much as you are a regulatory body, we are not saying you should do our own only, but please ensure that those providers of service, the telcos, are also doing their part by providing enabling infrastructure. I can tell you, even in data, everything is expensive and we're not getting value for money.
Now, moving away from this subject, another topic of discussion this morning is the essence of budget tracking with regards to budget implementation. A report is captured on the Punch newspaper notes that a majority of states in Nigeria are falling behind the projected budget expenditure in terms of the execution of capital projects across states. At a time when there's rising insecurity, there's increased traveling by state executives, and of course, demand for better wages. How do we better the quest of ensuring transparency in the accountability of public finance management?
I actually listened to the DG of a Bureau of Public Procurement, and I look at him when he was talking, the way they track projects, the way they follow things, and I said, if this is what you are saying is actually what's happened on a normal day, Nigeria should be Eldorado right now, because we have project issue. And I must also tell you that that's what most economists always ask for. That why do we have debt servicing that is eroding our capital projects? If you look at our current expenditure, it's always very expensive, very, very much higher compared to capital project. And this capital project is what Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, benefit from. It is what will give us our health facility. It is what will give us education facility. It is what will provide a road for us. Also provide all the social amenities that we actually need. But it is getting thinner every day, and the nation is poor. And when you talk to federal government, they will say, yes, we are pushing more money to the states. And states cannot actually account. I'm not saying states. I can mention 3, 4, 5 states, and others, you ask what they are using their money for. I can start mentioning Enugu. I can mention maybe Alex Oti of Abia. I can also mention Lagos. You know, when you mention these 3, 4, 5 states, you imagine what are others using their money to do. I will not even also blame them because we also have a challenge that we as an economist have said earlier that you float the naira and you remove the first subsidy. The naira floated has eroded even the value of money because if you say you have 500 million naira, you can't compare the value of it now as and when we have dollar at 500 naira and when we have
Now,
dollar
even
at
away from the
500.
dollars, Dr. Aliyu, let's look at the statistics available. A breakdown from the month of January up until June 2025 says that for 31 states put together, they disbursed a total of 2.5 trillion naira as capital votes, as against an expected 17.5 trillion naira. Now, there's a huge deficit in that. 31 states. What's going to be the reasons for such a low performance of their budgets?
I don't get that question. Are you saying what they disburse is lower or they disburse higher?
What they disbursed is lower. 31 states put together disbursed 2.5 trillion naira according to data available, as against a projected 17.5 trillion naira, which was supposed to be the capital votes for the first 6 months of 2025.
But that's another issue that you know. I actually engaged some DG, some also some essays, and I discovered that the level of disbursement is actually very low on this government. So are we saying the money is not available, or we actually mentioning those money and there is no value attached to it? But I recall President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said clearly that they now generate more revenue. And I also remember that FRS said they have actually beat their target. The custom also says so. So I don't know why it is not being disbursed. And if it's not disbursed for projects, especially capital projects, it's to the negative impact of for the generality of Nigeria. That means the road, you know, the hospital, they will suffer for it. And it's a bad one on the government side.
Now, even for the government agencies and departments, it's also on the need for fiscal accountability. There's always the confusion for Nigerians when we hear that a budget has been approved to the actual approval for the disbursement of funds, whatever ministry is in charge as the lead agency in the execution of those projects. How can Nigerians follow this process beyond the approval of budgets to the disbursements, the leading agency, and to ensure that these projects are executed according to the stipulated guidelines?
And that is why some of us are scoring President Muhammadu Buhari are better in terms of budgetary allocation, budgetary follow. You recall that this government have pushed 2024 budget to up to this time of 2025, which has already practice of January to December budgetary allocation. And that's a problem. So once you allocate a budget of a particular period, please make sure you sort it out. And you are able to sort it out, move it generally to another year so that there will be proper accountability. Nigeria can follow the money, follow the project, follow the process, and follow the execution. But in this case, that you know, you see that budget of last year is ongoing, current budget is ongoing, it brings a lot of confusion, and that's on the part of the federal government, SGF, and all agencies actually in charge of disbursement. They should disburse as and when you. Let me also bring this to your knowledge. You know, variation also coming to this. If you don't do what you're supposed to do as at January, and are doing it in August, there is a variation already because the value of money is not stable and it's not coming down to our advantage. It's also always increasing, and that's why some budget that you have looked into 2023. If you look at that budget this year, 2025, you see that there's a huge gap in terms of budgetary allocation because of variation, because of value of money, because of time and the economy itself. And that's why, as a country like Nigeria, who even have a fluctuated, economy or monetary or value for money or exchange rate, we must make sure that we execute as at the time we plan to execute.
Now, I think for the federal government, it's quite a very open secret. One that goes under the radar is states. This morning, I'd like for us to look at a few states that are performing well. You had mentioned Imo State. There are key indices as to what this performance is based on. For a state like Enugu, they're said to have recorded the highest capital to reoccurrence ratio. And with their total expenditure at 99.5 billion naira, the ongoing capital projects are quite commendable. Imo is said to be leading in terms of infrastructure development, being able to channel over 188.1 billion naira into capital expenditure, closely followed by Enugu as well. And then for Bayelsa State, it's said to boast a strong capital bias, spending 238.9 billion naira on capital as against 107.29 billion naira on recurrent. This is some of the key performing states as against other states in the country. What do you think is one of the stain points for these states that have been mentioned?
Right. So, in fact, I'm surprised that we are not having states, only the state with 30% derivation. I was thinking that's what we'll have them. I think they almost fall on the governor and his focus. If you look at Peter Mbao of Enugu, he's asked pension. He's a businessman who is coming from business perspective. So I think he has bring that to bear, and he has also ensured that capital project benefits the public more. So you must find a way to make sure that your capital expenditure is increased and recurrent is coming down, and you must also follow it with implementation. I think that's part of why. So it's like the Peter Mbao is now the pride of the president, who always say that they are giving more money to states. Others should be challenged. And you remember the three states you even mentioned. Enugu is PDP. Bayelsa is also a PDP, if I'm not mistaken.
I see the political coloration to this, but then again, let's move on to another issue. It's still on the demands for accountability with the use of public funds. Now, the Nigerian Bar Association has written to the AGF. It's over the withheld Osun local government funds. They're also threatening legal action. Are we living a dream of achieving this local government autonomy, or what could be said to be the peculiar issue with the withheld funds in Osun?
You know, it's always very sad that someone who fights, who is a veteran in fighting for local government autonomy, is at the heads of affair and is also practicing what he suffered. You know, it's a bad irony that we shouldn't be comparing. I recall President Bola Tinubu suffered in the hand of President Olusegun Obasanjo. That time because of the local government he actually created that time, and it's about a year plus or so until even the dual government before the fund was released to him. So now that we have local government in Osun, I don't know why he, under his watch, they will deny a local government in Osun, even though there has political coloration or political challenge in that area. I don't know why they will hold it, because people in the local government are going to suffer for it, and it will deny them quality education, quality healthcare, quality road, quality service, and quality activities in the environment. So I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should use his political office to also to correct that anomaly. And I'm happy that NBA is taking charge of it and leading, and that's why we celebrate the judiciary sometimes. Sometimes they come out to fight for what has to be fight for. Because for me, generally, I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I'm sure his aid and what have you are listening to us, this almost fall on him directly. They should look at it and solve it as soon as possible.
Now, talking about the strength of the judiciary, would we see this case actually translating to released funds? Because I don't know what supersedes the Supreme Court judgment granting financial autonomy to local governments. Do we now need the AMDA to begin to choose states to go after and also write back to the AGF for these funds to actually be released? We had the excuse of the need to open separate accounts, dedicated accounts from the local governments to the CBN as part of the bureaucratic delays. But what we would need the MDA to now come and be babysitting this process.
Well, the fact is that even beyond the Osun State, how far are other local government running? Are they getting that fund directly now? How is the operation of it? Do they even get that autonomy itself? So beyond even Osun that have some political coloration or political issue, how far are others? So I think it's becoming more of rhetoric, because when the AGF took that case up to Supreme Court, we are so happy that this is a action, not even rhetoric again. But as it were now, the implementation becomes so difficult. So government must follow it down there, and that's why some of us are also talking about states having their own electoral body being managed by federal, because if states always have his political party winning the local government election, nobody will challenge. Because I recall in the Ogun State specifically, when a particular local government chairman challenged the governor, he was removed. In fact, supported by State House of Assembly because he want the right thing to be done. He want the fund released to our local government directly. So I think the onus is still on the president to use his office to actually correct that anomalies and bring development to local government.
Well, time I guess would tell. Leaving that discussion, let's talk about international image. Now, following the Canadian court judgment, the PDP and APC were prescribed terrorist organization. This was following a request for asylum as sought after by a certain political figure. I don't want to name his name. But we've seen reactions from human rights lawyer Femi Falana, SAN, and now most recently by an eminent professor of law, Sagay, SAN as well, who's looking to prosecute that judgment, saying that the global implications of that can be damning on Nigeria. What do you make of this judgment from Canada, prescribing political parties and the likes of the APC and PDP as terrorist organizations?
Well, first and foremost, I condemn that judgment, and that judgment is selective, very, very selective. We've seen Israel attacking Gaza. We've seen we've seen even Hiroshima in Japan. We've seen America attacking. So are you now saying those that Netanyahu political party are the terrorist political party? You know, you have to do it and do it generally. So for one person to have committed an offense and you're not generalizing that they are terrorist organizations, I think it's out of place. It's not normal. And to see our learned saying that they should prove themselves, well, let's bring it back home. In as much as it is under their watch that those criminality are occurring. Yes, we can say yes. Make sure you fight those things because it is your time. But that doesn't give room to color. No, when you say APC, PDP is terrorist organization, you are actually saying Nigerians are terrorist organization because these two parties have actually ruled us from 1999 till date. So for me, I think that judgment should be challenged by federal government. You know, it's not a good one because it will give us bad optics, bad image in public. I think they should find a way to fight that judgment. But to our leaders in Nigeria who say they should prove they are not, yes, they should also prove they are not. Because it's under way and under your purview, this negativity, this terrorism, this banditry, you know, this insurgency are happening. So you should do something to it. So I think it's a two-way thing. But for me, I condemn that judgment.
Well, Dr. Aliyu Ilias, I must thank you for your time on the program this morning, speaking to these issues commonly pertaining to demands for accountability in public finance management. We appreciate you, and we hope to revisit the conversations in the coming day. Have a nice day.
Thank you for